But right now, what I would like to do is read this to you. You can see the words on the screen. You can hear me talk about Angola. Let's do it. I'll make it a little bigger here. Angola's history, from ancient kingdoms to today. Introduction. Angola is a country in Southwest Africa. It is next to Namibia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Zambia, and the Atlantic Ocean. Angola has different landscapes like coastal plains, savannas, and rainforests. These landscapes have shaped Angola's history, culture, and growth. So you can see Angola, Zambia, that is the Atlantic Ocean right down there. Namibia, the DRC. How about this? Ancient times. Before Europeans arrived, yes, there will be a big problem when Europeans arrive. There always is. Different indigenous groups lived in Angola. The Khoi and San people were some of the earliest. They were hunter-gatherers. So I didn't have that as one of our words, hunter-gatherers. But you can see this is what AI thought maybe the Khoi and San people looked like of ancient Angola. But let's talk really quickly about what hunter-gatherers are. It's exactly what it sounds like. They're probably living in very basic huts, mud huts probably, and they are hunting and they are gathering. When we say gathering, that means like berries, fruits, things that you can pick. All right, what about this? Kingdom of Congo with a K. A very important early kingdom in Angola was the Kingdom of Congo. It lasted from the 14th century to the 19th century. So the 1300s to the 1800s. This kingdom had a strong government led by a king called Congo. And we do have a picture of what AI thinks Congo looked like. Now, I'm not sure if he trained these lions or not, but this is what AI thought he might look like, which is pretty regal, pretty royal right there. King Congo. The Kingdom of Congo was important in trade, especially with the Portuguese who came in the late 15th century. Portuguese colonization. We will talk about what colony means. The Portuguese came to Angola in 1483 when, this is when you can laugh at my Portuguese pronunciation, Jago Chao. I probably said that wrong. A couple things I might say wrong in this paragraph. Reached the Congo River. At first they traded with locals, but by the 16th century they took more control and Angola became a Portuguese colony. The slave trade from Luanda and Benguela? Hope I'm saying that correctly. I know you will correct me. Benguela was a big part of the economy. So at first the Portuguese came and yeah, they were trading. And then probably because the Portuguese, that is that guy, Jago Chao, the Portuguese had better weapons. Well, slave trade happened and Angola became a colony, which is basically like the Portuguese could pretty much do what they wanted there, steal the natural resources, fight for independence and civil war. This is going to be very similar to what happens in a lot of parts of Africa. European powers will come in. Let me make this a little bigger here. European powers will come in. At first, maybe some good trade going on. Then there's a colony established. Then Europeans leave after a couple hundred years. Maybe there is a war that is fought for independence and then a civil war because the European colony or the European power was controlling so much that when they leave, there is a vacuum of power. We sometimes call it like okay, who is going to lead this kind of new country that has freedom? And there's often a struggle for that. Very common. Same thing happened in the United States, but like 100 to 200 years ago. A lot of these wars for independence in Africa happened in the 1900s. And in the United States, or the colonies before that, we're talking 1700s, early 1800s, but we won't get into that today. All right, back to Angola, make it a little bigger. So in the 20th century, so we're talking about the 1900s, Angolans started fighting against Portuguese rule. This led to the Angolan War of Independence in 1961. So if a country is independent, then they can determine their own fate. They have the power. They have the government. Three main groups. I will never remember these. I'm not asking you to either. The MPLA, the FNLA, and the UNITA. Those are just acronyms. They mean something bigger. We'll talk about one a little bit later. They fought for independence. Angola became independent on November 11th, 1975. Civil War and modern Angola. Okay, so after independence, Angola had a civil war from 1975 to 2002. That is a really long civil war. The MPLA, helped by the Soviet Union and Cuba. Okay, so that is interesting there. When I see those two countries, I think communism. Fought against UNITA or UNITA, supported by the United States and South Africa. So this would be more of a democracy here. The war hurt the country's growth and caused much suffering. Okay, really quickly. Vietnam, Korea. For the United States during the Cold War, Vietnam, Korea. Those were two wars. Korea, 1950s. Vietnam, 1960s into the 1970s. That is where the U.S. fought in Korea and Vietnam. But it's called a proxy war, not one of our vocabulary words. But it basically means like the Soviet Union, communist country, was actually fighting against the U.S., but not directly. So they were using like another country in order to fight their wars. This happened in Afghanistan in the 1980s. The Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. Yeah, sure. Soviet Union, Afghanistan, they were fighting, but the United States was sending in a lot of help for Afghanistan to fight off the Soviets. Angola, the same thing. It was a proxy war. Yes, there was a civil war in Angola. One side was backed by the communists. One side was backed by a democracy, I guess. It was the United States. Other countries, probably France, England, helping out there. The article mentions South Africa. All right, let's bring up this article again. There is a picture of what AI thinks modern day Luanda looks like. We just lost the lights here. It's okay. We don't need lights, right? You don't need to see my face that much. The article is more important. Today, Angola is improving from the war's effects. Has a growing economy, mainly because of oil and diamonds. Angola is working on becoming stable and solving problems like poverty. What about the relations with their neighbors? Angola's relationships with neighboring countries have changed over time. It was involved in regional conflicts, but now works to strengthen ties with other countries in the Southern African Development Community. Again, it's very long, very hard to say. SADC. SADC. What is the SADC? So you might be familiar with the EU or the European Union. It's where a lot of countries in Europe got together kind of combine their economies to try to become a stronger force in the world. Well, this is happening in Southern Africa too. 16 countries are trying to come together in order to make each country a little bit more powerful, a little bit more stable, a little bit more rich. And hey, Angola has lots of resources, right? They mentioned oil, tons of oil, diamonds. And some of you have told me, and this is true, that, a lot of times the money that the government gets doesn't reach the people. But we'll talk about it a little later. I mean, I'll talk about it now. Angola is starting to have really good infrastructure. Talking about infrastructure, we're talking about well-paved roads, bridges, things that make life easier. All right, let's bring up this. Almost done here. Make it a little bigger. Got the conclusion coming up. The SADC is made up of 16 countries, including the DRC, Malawi, Tanzania, and others. They believe cooperating will improve all of their countries, similar to the EU. Here's the last part. Angola's history is rich and complex. It includes ancient kingdoms, struggles with colonial powers, and efforts to recover and grow. Understanding Angola's history helps us see the efforts to become stable and prosperous. Okay, that is a first read through, maybe a little difficult. I mean, it covers like about 1,000 years, right? In a very short period of time. Hopefully, that gives you a good understanding of like where Angola has come from and then what is happening in Angola today.